Hello, 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 hello. Hi, I hope that you're doing well. I was thinking that today we might do something a little bit different, if that's okay with you. I was thinking that today we'd have more of like heart-to-heart. You know, typically I try to keep it pretty light and surface level here. But I was thinking that it would be kind of fun to have one of those conversations that you have with like your best friend when it's like 2 in the morning and you know you're kind of delirious from being sleepy. Maybe one of you stoned. Never usually me. I always liked hanging out with people that were stoned, but I personally never really partook because like my thoughts are already weird enough as it is, but I would always feel like, oh wow, finally, like someone's on my level, and now I can have like the types of conversations that I want to have. So I was thinking we could have one of those types of conversations, but there's also going to be like a lot of triggers in this video, so it's not just going to be a heart-to-heart. I have different gloves, some leather gloves, some latex gloves, some vinyl gloves. So I'm going to be like, you know, putting them on and caressing your face while we have a little chit chat. So if that sounds good, then stick around. So for most of my youth, like high school, college years, I thought that it was a victory that nobody ever knew what I was truly thinking or feeling. And I saw that as my strength, that I was very sort of like mysterious and unpredictable. And it wasn't really until I got older that I realized that it was not a victory, that nobody knew who I truly was, and that, you know, disguising yourself and editing yourself and only revealing like a very specific part of yourself is really only a limitation and suffocating, and that it's not something that you should strive for, and it's not a victory. And at the time I thought that it made me less vulnerable to only show certain aspects of myself out of fear of judgment, because it definitely makes us feel more exposed when we just put ourselves 100% out there. Because when you're only showing certain aspects of yourself, you know, if someone doesn't like you, you're able to say to yourself, well, they never really knew me. And I thought there was some sort of protection in that. But at a certain point I realized that I was wasting so many opportunities at forming like an actual connection with people, and that I was the only one losing in, in this scenario. was so many opportunities and so many jobs where perhaps there could have been people that I formed a way deeper bond with had I allowed myself to be like 100% authentic instead of this watered down version that I thought would be more palatable. And while you may avoid enemies by editing yourself, you also avoid forming true, deep connections. And maybe this is something that's just common knowledge to most people, but you know, it actually took me quite a long time to realize this. So I thought that I would share it in case there's any young people or just people in general that, you know, have made themselves sort of this untouchable island. There's way more strength in being vulnerable. So I know that people sort of look at me and see my sort of aesthetic, and they think that I just would like to discuss like the latest episode of the Kardashians, or like vanilla oat milk lattes, or some other like totally vapid topic. However, it's not the case. And it's my own fault for presenting myself this way. I think that, you know, growing up in Hollywood and living in this area, you know, we all become like the product of our environments to a certain extent. You know, hopefully at some point, not today, but hopefully at some point, like I can get to a place where I feel comfortable enough to, you know, make a video with no makeup on and like my hair not done, and try to be 100% vulnerable, because I realize it can seem hypocritical to talk about authenticity while I'm presenting myself in a way that may be classified as plastic by some people's standards. So I want to say that I like recognize the potential for some hypocrisy here, and I, you know, am addressing it, that I'm not 100% practicing what I preach. Because wearing makeup and wearing, I don't know, you know, certain clothes or whatever is a form of a mask, and it is a form of not being 100% authentic. But, you know, I'm a work in progress. Rome wasn't built in a day. So cut me some slack. Baby steps. So I had said in a previous video that I identified as a misfit. And I think some people misunderstood what I meant, so I was going to kind of clarify that. It's not that I have difficulty talking to people or that I'm socially awkward. I really feel that I can pretty much talk to anyone. What I meant by the statement is that I don't identify with any particular group, and that I never have. I've always just identified with individuals who I connected with on some deeper level. So while I was in high school, I never had like one specific group or clique, that I belonged to. There was usually one person in various cliques or groups that I formed a connection with, and I would just sort of like bounce from group to group to group, because my connection was with that one person and not the group as a whole. And I've always, been that way to a degree. I've never felt that I've belonged to a certain group, because I'm just like a very contradictory person in basically every single way possible. But the advantage, I think, of that is that you're always standing on the outside of the storm, so to speak, as this sort of unbiased observer. I think that when you're constantly surrounded by people that all share the same ideology as you and the same beliefs as you, while it may be comforting to have that sort of unity, you're limited in that you're only seeing the world through a certain lens, as opposed to connecting with people who all think very differently, but who you still have a connection with, if that makes sense. And I just have learned in life that it's really advantageous to befriend people that on the surface, and I emphasize the word surface, who on the surface may appear different from you in some regard, because they'll open your eyes to thinking in different ways than if you only allowed yourself to associate with people who all share exactly the same thoughts and beliefs. And it was making me think back to when I was in college. There was this one professor that I had that was really, really amazing at initiating really thought-provoking discussions. And he would say something that I've always remembered. And he would say, listen with the intent to understand rather than to respond. And it's amazing how simple that is, but how difficult that is for so many people to do. And it's something that you really see if you spend any time whatsoever on social media. Is just a bunch of people trying to spout off facts and statistics and going into a debate for the sole purpose of like feeding their own ego rather than to actually listen with the intent to understand. Because never in the history of time has anyone's core beliefs ever been shaped by picking up a textbook and seeing some numbers on the page that spout off a certain statistic, and had that be the reason that they hold a certain belief. We're all the product of our life experiences, and our life experiences are what shape our beliefs and opinions. So you're never going to persuade someone by going to, myopinionisright.com and memorizing a bunch of facts, because nobody cares. Nobody cares. What they care about is what they've experienced and what they know to be true based on what they've lived. And it's not a victory to walk away from any discussion feeling as though you've defeated someone in an argument. It's a victory walking away from a discussion and feeling like you understand someone better now and their perspective and their opinion. And we don't get that when we go into conversations from the perspective of ego. It's amazing how much could be accomplished if we actually listened to people with empathy and tried to understand where they were coming from and why they feel the way they feel and why they think the way they think, rather than just trying to impose our own agendas on them. Nothing's ever accomplished when you have that type of mindset. It's a confusing time to be alive. The world's so complicated right now. And I was just thinking that it would be so nice if the planet was so vast and never-ending that we could still just get on a ship and set off sail and be able to find some place that was 100% uninhabited. Just start over. Start from scratch. Completely just separate ourselves from all the madness that's going on, to hopefully learn from the mistakes that we've made and be able to start a completely new civilization. Unfortunately, the world is so small now through technology and whatnot that there's nowhere that we can go to really 100% escape. Probably the new frontier is going to be exploring space. However, I was thinking that the only people that are going to be able to afford to do space travel and be the first to colonize. But then I started thinking that the only people that are going to be able to afford space travel, and the ones that are going to be able to leave here and colonize the new planets are going to be the people that are in the top 1%. And basically, they're the root of the entire problem. So, maybe the goal is just to get them all to leave. And then we can have this place to ourselves and start fresh without their agenda. It's an interesting time to be alive in the sense that I think for the first time on a global level, people all across the world are starting to realize that we can't necessarily trust our leadership, our media, our government, corporations. Basically, every institution has an agenda, and I think collectively we're all starting to kind of wake up to that fact simultaneously. I think we're all starting to realize that no information is ever delivered without an intention. And we're all starting to question, what is their true motivation for wanting me to think or feel a certain way? It's like everyone's kind of waking up from sleep at the same time, and we're all thinking the same thing. It's like the scene in Wizard of Oz where they finally peek behind the curtain and see the true wizard and see him for what he truly is. I know I've mentioned True Detective Season 1 a bunch of times, and people are probably like, yeah, we get it. You like that show enough. But it just reminded me of my probably favorite scene from that show, which is the ending scene. So, at the end of Season 1, and this isn't really a spoiler alert, it's just a conversation, but at the end of Season 1, there's like a major shootout, and Matthew McConaughey's character is really severely injured. And Woody Harrelson shows up at the hospital to get him out of there because he doesn't want to just be laying in the hospital bed, even though he's really not ready to be leaving the hospital. And as Woody Harrelson is pushing him in a wheelchair, they're outside and it's nighttime. There's lots of stars in the sky. And he says to him, "Didn't you used to tell me that when you were a kid, that you used to make up a bunch of stories about the stars?" And Matthew McConaughey says, I lived in Alaska, and, I didn't have television, and there really was nothing for me to do. So I just would make up all these different stories, but recently I've realized that there's only one story, and it's the same story that's been going on since the beginning of time. The battle between good and evil, lightness versus darkness. And Woody Harrelson's character looks up at the sky and he says, "It looks like the darkness takes up the vast majority of that territory. And it looks like the darkness is winning." And Matthew McConaughey kind of, agrees with him for a moment, but then he pauses and he says, "I think you're looking at it the wrong way. In the beginning, it was all dark. So if you ask me, the light is winning." And I think that that's a really important thing to remember. That even though it might seem when we look up at the night sky that it's basically made up of a majority of darkness with only little specks of light, that originally it was all darkness. So those little rays of hope and goodness and love are breaking through the darkness. I know that sounds kind of hokey and sort of like Pollyanna-ish, but change really only occurs through love. True change can never come from hatred. And think about that. Hatred just produces a never-ending cycle of more hatred. And it's just a tug-of-war contest between two groups where the power is going to constantly shift, and the balance of power is going to constantly shift eternally, forever, in this never-ending cycle of hatred. Hatred only produces more hatred. The only way to break the cycle and the only way to produce successful change is through love. I hope that in our lifetimes we're able to see a movement. It probably would have to start from the bottom up, because the, forces and powers at the top want to keep all of us fractured and divided. But it'd be so wonderful if we all came together and realized the strength and the power that we have if we're unified, and that we all realize that we're in this together. And the last thing I want to do right now is sound like I'm on some sort of soapbox, or that I have it all figured out, because I am so far from having anything figured out. Alright, enough on the heavy stuff. On a lighter note, I've been watching these shows that all star Danny McBride. I don't know if you're familiar with who he is, but he's freaking hilarious. So I first started off watching can never remember the name of this damn show. It has gemstones in it. I had to pause the video and look up the title. It's called The Righteous Gemstones for some reason. I can never remember the name of that show. But, so I started with that. And then I watched Vice Principals, also written and starring Danny McBride. And now I'm watching Eastbound and Down. The people above me and like their constant moving of chairs are like the bane of my existence. You have no idea how many chair scrapes I have to edit out of every video. I'm leaving that one in just so you can feel my pain. But anyways, if you like just like stupidity and ridiculousness and shenanigans, then I definitely recommend checking out some of these shows. I really related to Vice Principals because I had the misfortune of working for Los Angeles Unified School District for a pretty substantial amount of time. And I won't get into the specifics, but a lot of like the pettiness and like ridiculous dramas, unfortunately, really hit home. There's definitely like a hierarchy that exists within the staff there, and just so much pettiness. I loved the students. Well, not all of them, but most of them. And the only thing that was really difficult about that job was just how petty the staff was. It was just like living in a really small town where everybody gossiped about everyone and everybody was up in everybody else's business. It's probably the same like at all jobs though. I think that's why predominantly I tend to get along better with men versus women, and unfortunately, and I'm sorry, ladies, I don't mean to throw us under the bus here, but unfortunately a lot of women like love gossip, and schools end up, for the most part, seem to have an imbalance of way more females working there than there are men, and just that abundance of estrogen all in one place is just a hotbed of trouble. I think it's good to have a balance of male and female energy. In general, and this is probably not a popular opinion, or maybe it is at this point, who knows, but I would love to see the entire school system like basically completely dismantled and to start from scratch. Having worked at a school for a long time, and just my personal belief, I guess, I just feel like so much time is wasted memorizing like really useless facts as opposed to trying to actually teach skills and engagement and help people become productive members of society. I feel that students would really benefit from having a shorter day where they're not there at like 7:30 in the morning, because most kids, like, that's not their natural biological clock, and they're just like sleep deprived like their entire life. And so much of the day is just filler. You really don't need 8 hours. You just need more productive time. And then this also might be an unpopular opinion, but I think forcing kids to read the classics actually just makes them hate reading. And while they may, as an adult, enjoy reading something like The Old Man and the Sea, forcing 14-year-olds to read these books that they in no way, shape, or form identify with, relate to, connect with, only makes people have a lifelong hatred of reading. If instead they selected books that were more contemporary and relatable, you might actually produce students that enjoy reading and might go on to read the classics later on. Because let's be real, none of them, or hardly any of them, actually read these books. They just go online and find out what they need to know from like Chat GPT or some other online source. Basically, I just think we need to start over from the ground up everywhere. Should we start a revolution? I wonder what the most remote, isolated place, cut off from all civilization is. Probably somewhere like in the rainforest. I think that we need to go there. I wish that like a group of us could just find some really isolated, uninhabited place and just completely start from scratch. And just not have the focus be on acquiring materialistic wealth or power, but have it be more of like the society of people from Avatar, where they're all just sort of living together in harmony with nature. I sound like such a hippie. Ironically, I'm like, obviously not a hippie in a lot of ways, but I think we all need a change. I think we all need to go Avatar. I'm gonna start the Avatar movement. And, we're just gonna go live in a jungle somewhere. What do you say? You ready to break free from the rat race? You wanna go live in the forest with me? It can't be any worse, right? It's gotta be a step up. There's only room for improvement. Well, on that note, here's another weird video. disjointed, random thoughts. Welcome to the insanity that is my mind. I hope you have a wonderful week. I hope you enjoyed some of this, even though it was basically a discussion about the complete unraveling and dismantling of society. Good talk.